Hail and well met, fellow adventurers, and welcome back to another episode of Too Many Cards and Dice. I've taken a bit of a hiatus. When I'm not gaming regularly, I am really not feeling all that creative, but had the cards out, and I found this in the back of the closet. This deck, Kami of the Crescent Moon, is a commander deck. I built this several years ago as a gift to my niece who was starting to play Magic. She did quite well with it. I haven't touched it since she went to college, and she's now graduated, so it's been closer to 6 years at least. Anyhow, as I recall, the deck is a mix of things that synergize with Kami of the Crescent Moon here, as well as just generic blue good stuff, and then your typical control elements, which arguably could be considered typical blue good stuff. But anyhow, when I'm all done filming the video, I will type up a deck list and throw it on Archidect and throw the link down below. Anyhow, let's get started, shall we? I've got yellow sleeves, and I've got some spare sleeves down here in the case. These are the only yellow sleeves I've got. Dragon shields by the feel of them. Kami the Crescent Moon, blue, spirit, 1/3. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws a card. Now, it's kind of group huggish, but being blue, ideally you turn this to your advantage. And I've got all the cards turned over. These are not sorted. I've not looked through these since the last time the deck was played. So a couple years. And I'll be just as surprised by some of the cards as you will. So let's start. All right, we start with Spire Golem. Affinity for islands, which makes this basically, or ideally, a free 2/4 artifact flyer. Island. All right, Evacuation. A lovely instant. Return all creatures to their owner's hands. So hopefully, there's at least a few cards in here that I can benefit from with their ETB. Another island, so pretty. Curse of the Swine, a lovely X spell sorcery. Exile the creatures, and I hand out boars in exchange. It's a boring card. Desertion, counter target spell, and then if it's a creature or artifact, I get control of it. That's kind of fun. Kind of expensive at 5, but it is what it is. Library of Lang. Now, this is an ancient card. This one is revised. You can tell by the borders if you look closely. Anyhow, you pay 1 and you must skip your discard. And then if any card forces you to discard, you can choose to put it on top of your library instead. And if it's a random discard, you can look at it before deciding where to send it. Halimar Depths. I love this in a blue deck or a blue one other color deck. I mean, because basically it's not exactly scrying, but looking at the top 3 and rearranging can be quite useful. Aetherling does all sorts of things for 6 mana. Kind of expensive nowadays, but frankly, I enjoy the unblockable part. I think that's the best aspect there. Sphinx of the Magosi, another 6-drop. A flying 6/6 that lets me draw cards and put counters on this guy. So Big Beater becomes bigger in casual games. Dispel, counter target instant. More blue decks should run these. Mole Drifter, all right. Flying, draw 2 cards when it enters, and it has Evoke. So I can play it as an instant and then sack it immediately. Blue Sun Zenith. I remember when this was in every blue deck. Anyhow, draw X spells and shuffle the Zenith back into the library. Swiftfoot Boots. You don't really need haste in this deck, but the protection is really, really nice. Steel Hellkite. Maybe I spoke too soon. Giving this guy haste is kind of nice. And he is just super removal. If you run this card, take advantage of that X and blow things up. Especially all those tokens out there. Mystic Speculation. I love it because it has buyback and it's scry 3. What a lovely, lovely card. Ghost Quarter, because some lands need to be killed. Wasteland would be preferable, but until WotC comes to their senses and puts those in every single commander deck, I'm not going to get it. Certainly not for a present deck. Island, island. Buried Ruin. This suggests I have several artifacts in here worth bringing back. We shall see. I hit all the land. All right, Steel Enchantment. I've fallen out of love with this card because I don't regularly encounter the Theros Indestructible Gods anymore. But man, when those are running rampant, this is a great card to steal them with. Although it is also fine for stealing Bothersome Smothering Tithes and Rhystic Studies and other such nonsense that people like to play. Preordain. Just scry and draw. Flow of Ideas. Draw a card for each island you control. You're paying 6 and it's a sorcery. You're loading up your hand. So I'm really hoping that Labman and or that Jace that is basically Labman is in this deck. High Tide with the old art from Fallen Empires. Great card in any mono blue deck. Telling Time. I mean, it's not scry, it's not draw, but it gives you options at instant speed. Borrow's Expertise. I'm bouncing 3 things, and then I can play something cheap for free. Clone. I mean, you copy the best thing out there, which the way we're going is probably not something of yours. Dream Fracture. All right, counter a spell and its controller and yourself draw a card. Counterspell, self-explanatory, although honestly I don't like this art, which is probably why I put it in a gift deck. Rewind, though, that's a great counterspell, especially with that untapped part. All right, cycling land, negate more counter magic. Ponder, draw, look at the top 3, put them back, or shuffle, then draw. Cyclonic Rift, when I said, just generic blue good stuff. If you've got an extra slot in your blue something deck and you don't know what else to put in there, jam in Cyclonic Rift. You can never go wrong, and it pairs very well with your opponent's tiers. Myriad Landscape, great in monocolor decks, I swear by it. Magus of the Future, just one of many wizards that were formerly enchantments. Play with your top card revealed, and you can play the top card of your library. Dictate a Crewfix. Flashing in, extra draw for everybody. Sturmgeist. Flying, star, where star is the cards in your hand. This might be the most synergistic piece in here with this draw. And whenever he deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. I mean, it costs 5 to cast. It's a fun card. Certainly not tier 4. Oh, and I have no idea what tier this deck would be. And I won't know until I plug it into Archidect and it thinks for me. Anyhow, Spine of East Shah. This clocks in at 7 mana. Destroys stuff when it hits the battlefield. And whenever it goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, I return it to my hand. It's expensive removal, but at the time when I built this, it was better than no removal. Thought Vessel. I distinctly recall paying real money to get this card because this was the only version you could get. Anyhow, it's a rock with no maximum hand size. A little bit of synergy there. Soul Ring, we all know and loathe. Chasm Skulker. Drawing cards, making counters, and then making little tokens. Trinket Mage. This implies that there is a Trinket Mage package, a bunch of 0 and 1 drop artifacts that I can fetch up. If I built this deck today, I don't know that I would put a non-land tutor in here because if the deck is borrowed and when the deck is new, people just don't know what to search for. Luckily, Trinket Mage is pretty self-limiting by the it can only get artifacts and they can have to cost 1 or 0, so whatever. Solemn Simulacrum. Trinket Mage will not be fetching this guy up. Venser's Journal, nor will he be getting that. I've got a strong artifact, keep all the cards in your hand theme. And I love Venser's Journal. It's a great casual card. Yes, you typically cannot win with all the life points, but it makes a dandy life shield. Sapphire Medallion. Now, I remember when this was also a pricey card. Not anymore, which is great because it and its cousins have been reprinted. Excuse me. If you're running monocolored decks, except maybe the green, pick these up for those decks. So good, so useful. Mnemonic Wall. 0/4 defender and enters the battlefield. Return instant or sorcery to your hand for 5 mana. It's expensive. This might be one of my win cons, Corrupted Conscience. You're paying 5 mana to enchant a creature. You steal the creature and it gets infect. My best experiences with this card is you cast it on something that you already own. You cannot guarantee your opponents will play something gross, but you'll have gross things that can fly or are otherwise unblockable. Augur of Bolas. He's just a guy who likes to bounce and not exactly scry. Another island, another island, another island, another island. I'm a terrible shuffler, or whoever played this last was. Mystic Sanctuary, technically an island, but it lets you return instants or sorcery from your graveyard to the top of your library. It's very useful, bit of recursion. All the lands. Gracious. All right, Relic of Progenitus. This can be fetched up with Trinket Mage, and it eats graveyards. Reliquary Tower, Aethergale, another 5 cost and sorcery to return 6 non-land permanents to their owner's hands. Save yourself, maybe get a precious ETB. All right, Kefnet the Mindful, flying indestructible, but he cannot block or attack unless you've got cards in hand. And then you draw a card. You can pay mana, draw a card, and then you return a land you control to its owner's hand. Ooh, like the Halimar Depths, perhaps. Seed the Synod. This is a 0-drop artifact land, so you can go fetch it with Trinket Mage, which makes him ramp. Wahaha! Aren't I the clever one? Stormtide Leviathan. There was a time when I would try to jam this into every deck with blue as possible. I've since kind of learned better, but I don't know. He costs 8 and has Island Walk. Then he makes all other lands islands in addition to their other types. No, not so you can play Tsunami. That's a different deck and really funny because you protect the Tsunami with counter magic and people get upset. But also, he's a great defensive piece. Creatures without flying or Island Walk cannot attack. Period. And if nothing else, he can attack, maybe with infect from your Corrupted Conscience. Engulf the Shore, instant speed bounce, which is based on islands. Terrain generator, you can play extra land from your hand. Very useful when you're drawing lots and lots of cards. Recurring Insight lets you draw those lots of cards. Ideally, you play the 6-drop sorcery when someone actually has more cards than you, which does happen even in this deck, but it has rebound, so you just draw up to balance out whatever your opponent's got going on. Body of Knowledge. Its power and toughness equal to the number of cards in hands, no maximum hand size, and whenever it's dealt damage, draw that many cards. So yeah, people can block all the time, and they will, because this has absolutely 0 evasion, but you're just going to draw all the cards. I'm really, really hoping there's like that Phyrexian thing that deals damage based on cards you draw. I'm hoping that's in here. All right, 4C. Scry 4, draw 2. That's a 4-speed sorcery. Island. Aether Eyes. Always a fine card. Instant speed, bounce all attacking creatures to their owner's hands. Great defensive piece there. Man at War from Visions. Look at that beautiful, beautiful art. Enters play, you bounce a creature. There's an island for you. Thieving Magpie. I've loved these since Urza's when I think they came out originally. Anyhow, flying 1/3, when it deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. For what it's worth, it's not just combat damage. I doubt there's anything in here that takes advantage of it. But if you're building that type of deck, it's any damage this guy deals. All right. Ooh, extra turn. Part the Water Veil. I'm thinking I built this around Zendikar block. Anyhow, take an extra turn, exile, part the Water Veil, and in a pinch, you can animate a land, making it a 6/6 elemental creature. Capsize. Something to do with all the infinite mana. No, this deck is not creating infinite mana. But if it did, that's what you could do. And if nothing else, you can pay a very expensive bounce for everything, time and again. Elixir of Immortality, another part of the Trinket Mage fetching package. Gain in life, shuffling your library, your graveyard into your library. Cycling land, Crystal Ball. I had close to 40 of these at one point. One for every deck I was building or had built, because I loved it. It has long since been outclassed. It's great as a niche card in a handful of commanders, but anymore it is easily surpassed. Another island, Rite of Replication. I love this card so much. Now granted, I will almost always hold it in my hand until I can kick it, because when you kick it, you make 5 copies of something instead of just one. And the world's best target for this is Perplexing Chimera, I believe is the name. I don't know, it's a blue creature that you give to somebody and then you gain control of whatever spell they tried to catch. So when you get enough of those out there, nobody can do anything they want. And then they scoop in frustration, and that's pretty funny. Good old Brainstorm with the Ice Age art. Swan Song. A lovely piece of counter magic there. Definitely worth running. Presuming you've got one, because I know they're not budget. All right, Island. Yay, I did have one. And it does not have the word Phyrexian in it, but it's the Psychosis Crawler. He is dealing damage whenever I draw a card. I was hoping this was in here. Dissipate, counter spell, and then you exile it. Mystic Remora. Ice Age common, cumulative upkeep. I get to draw cards unless opponents pay 4. Island, Archaeomancer. Human Wizard 1/2 for 4. When he enters the battlefield, return an instant or sorcery from graveyard to hand. All right, and our last card is Fogbank. This 0/2 defender has flying and prevents all combat damage that would be dealt to and from Fogbank. All right. So it looks like the deck dirtles along and then tries to win through damage of some sort. There are far more focused versions of this deck out there. But it's a nice blast from the past, because you can see at least how I built several years ago when things were far slower than they are today in many games. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got your own Kami deck, no doubt better tuned than this thing, by all means, share it down in the comments. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. And that would be it. Cheers to you.